For sinister cases of déjà vu that reveal the haunting truth behind unexplainable experiences, Sarah stumbled through the dimly lit hallway of their small house, fatigue weighing on her like a heavy cloak. As she dragged herself to the kitchen, she caught a fleeting glimpse of Alex through the window. He stood in the yard, giggling, chatting animatedly with someone. She squinted, feeling the hairs on her arms stand up. She swore she had seen the same scene, the same laughter, the night before, or maybe a week ago. The memory slipped away like water through her fingers. The dog barked at shadows creeping at the edges of their property, frantic and wild. There was something unsettling in those shadows, as if they held secrets dark enough to twist her insides. Every night was the same tiring shifts at the diner, the clatter of plates ringing in her ears while she served the locals who never quite looked her in the eye. By the time she got home, exhaustion wrapped around her like a thick fog. But lately, the exhaustion was different. It was mixed with an overwhelming dread. "Mom, Johnny says he wants to play," Alex shouted one afternoon, eyes sparkling with mischief. Sarah's heart raced, a chill creeping down her spine. Johnny. It felt familiar, like a name she had heard in whispers. Wasn't he that the name of a kid from her old neighborhood? Or was it mere coincidence? When she dug out old photo albums from the attic, she spotted a faded image of a boy with dark hair and sad eyes that looked just like the one Alex always talked to. Weeks passed, and the strange occurrences worsened. Her phone rang late at night, but silence greeted her each time she answered. A chill ran through her, she never recognized the number. Her neighbors nodded and smiled, hiding behind their brightly painted doors as she shared her concerns about Alex's imaginary friend, and the neighbors whispered secrets about children vanishing without a trace. They laughed lightly, brushing it off. "Just stress, Sarah," they said. But she sensed something deeper, a shared knowledge of darkness that lingered in the air. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the sunset cast long, reaching shadows, the whispers grew louder, now almost pleading. The eerie laughter from outside echoed off the walls as she watched Alex talk animatedly with thin air. Was it just her imagination, or did the shadows behind him twist just slightly, forming something recognizable? That dreadful moment settled over her like a shroud, and she confronted her neighbors, desperation creeping into her voice. "Don't you see? We're losing our children. We need to talk about what is happening in this town." Laughter turned to nervous murmurs, the air thickened with tension. Their eyes flickered fear, disbelief, but also something darker, something she couldn't grasp. As they retreated into their homes, Sarah felt the chill of a nightmare grasp her heart. What if Johnny was no mere figment, but something far worse? As she turned back toward her house, Alex's laughter cut through her thoughts like glass. "Johnny says you'll never guess what happens next." The shadows nestled deeper into the corners, wrapping around her resolve, and suddenly, every dark tale she'd ever heard came crashing back, choking her with anxiety. What truth had she stumbled upon, and what would it demand of her next? A low hum filled the air, one that seemed to vibrate right through Sarah's bones. She pressed her palm against her chest, feeling her heart race as she stepped back into the house. The laughter outside had faded, replaced by an unsettling silence that felt oppressively thick. Had Alex come inside? She peered into the living room, half expecting a playful grin, but it was empty. "Alex," she called, her voice trembling. It strained against the stillness, echoing down the hallway. The dog whimpered from his corner, tail tucked tight as if sensing something awful loomed nearby. The phone buzzed loudly on the kitchen counter, startling her. It was that same unknown number. She hesitated, but the dread coiled in her stomach urged her to answer. "Hello?" Static crackled on the line, then a faint whisper reached her ears, Sarah. Her breath hitched. Who is this? Panic twisted her gut as the line went dead. She dropped the phone like it burned her fingers. Shadows flickered at the windows, dancing in time with the gnawing dread growing inside her. A sense of helplessness crept over her, a premonition that something was very, very wrong. That eye in the corner of the living room, something shifted. A dark figure, too still and too silent, stood framed by the curtains. Sarah squinted, heart hammering, trying to make it out. It wasn't Alex, it was something even darker. The figure dissolved as she blinked, swallowed by the thickening shadow. Her mind churned with fear as she recalled the stories of children who vanished, snatched away by whispers promising games forevermore. Alex? She shouted again, the panic breaking through her voice. Her feet moved on instinct toward the front door. She flung it open and burst out into the night. The moon was almost full, casting an unnatural glow. He was standing there, in the yard, transfixed, staring into the pitch darkness beyond the fence. The shadows laughed again, but it was different this time. They twisted and morphed into shapes that felt too human. Step away from there. Sarah shouted, sprinting toward him. But the ground felt wrong underfoot, heavy and unforgiving. The shadows seemed to reach out, pulling her back as she fought to get to Alex. Mom, it's okay. He called, voice lilting with joy that twisted her insides. Johnny is just showing me something. Alex, no, she cried, closing the grip she had on her own fear. Just as she reached him, she felt a coldness brush against her cheek. She turned, heart racing as the flickering shadows coalesced into forms, faces that she recognized from the edges of her childhood memories. She gasped, backing away. Get inside. But the words felt empty, like echoes in a graveyard, yet Alex turned, beaming with delight. Johnny says I can stay. He says this is where the fun really begins. That smile, so innocent and yet devoid of understanding, sent chills crawling up her spine. As she looked into her child's eyes, she saw something else staring back, an age-old wisdom and a darkness that made her stomach churn. The wind picked up, carrying with it whispers, secrets from a past entwined with dread. Sarah shivered, knowing with every fiber of her being that something was terribly wrong. The ground felt as if it were shifting beneath her. She moved once more, desperate. Alex, come on. We have to go. Now. But the shadows danced closer now, their laughter echoing sinister promises of games, of friendship, of forgotten kids. And as Alex turned his head toward her, his smile stretched wider than any child's should. Something deep within Sarah screamed. What was happening? What was it that Johnny wanted? As darkness seeped into her heart, she reached for Alex, her fingers trembling, feeling the pull of the shadows grace her skin. There was no returning from this. Mom, don't be scared, Alex whispered, but Sarah could hear the laughter still. Guttural and hungry, and somehow, familiar. Behind him, in the murky depths, shadows began to swirl, forming a visage that chilled her to the bone. A figure emerged, familiar yet twisted, whispering her name. Sarah stumbled. Terror closing in around her. What awaited them in the darkness? Were they to become lost like those before? As she fought against the menacing grip of panic, all she could think was, would they escape what was coming next? The shadows surged, hungry for connection, and Sarah felt an icy grip tighten around her throat. She turned back to Alex, who stood as if in a trance, eyes locked on the darkness. Alex. She reached for him, but something tugged at her, pulling her away from her child, back toward the porch. Her limbs felt heavy, as if they were filled with lead. Mom, you don't understand. He shouted. There was an urgency in his voice that twisted her heart like a knife. Johnny wants us to join him. We can play forever. Rage ignited within her. No. I want to let you. With a surge of adrenaline, she lunged forward, grabbing Alex by the shoulders, shaking him fiercely. Snap out of it. This isn't game. For a moment, the spell seemed to break. His expression shifted, eyes widening with confusion, but just as quickly, the smile returned, a mask so uncanny, it sent spikes of dread straight to her core. "Mom, you're hurting me," and then she saw it. The shadows swirled and twisted behind him, forming darker figures that slinked along the edges. There were children, laughing. Their eyes glinted with something dark and ancient. They were reaching for Alex, their bony fingers stretching, yearning. "No!" Sarah's scream tore through the air like shattered glass, but the darkness swallowed it whole. She felt the ground beneath her tremble, vibrating with a sinister energy, as if the earth itself was in league with whatever lurked beyond the fence. "Mom, stop!" Alex's voice faded, echoing in her mind, the way a distant memory does before it's swallowed by time. Before she could think, the familiar face emerged from the shadows, cold and distorted. It had the features of someone she knew, a playful smile now twisted into something horrible. "Sarah," the figure crooned, the name slithering through the air like smoke. "Don't you want to play?" "No!" she shrieked, the desperation clawing at her throat. "Get away from him! Get away from my son!" But the shadows laughed, their sound dripping with malice. It was a sound that seeped into her bones, making her deathly aware of her surroundings, the peeling paint of the house, the gravel underfoot, and the chilling fingers of the night air wrapping around her like a caress from the grave. "Alex, we have to go." She began to drag him back towards the house, but resistance flooded the air and the shadows pushed against her, thick and intoxicating. "Mom, please," he pleaded, voice cracking, torn between her and Johnny's beckoning call. The faces watching them twinkled with glee, desperate for a new playmate to join their ghastly fun. In the closest shadows, one child lingered longer than the rest, its eyes glowing with a terrifying hunger. "Come play, Sarah," it whispered, low and enticing. "You've always wanted to join us, no?" Emotion spiraled into fury. With every ounce of strength she had, she pulled Alex closer, tearing him from whatever grip the shadows tried to lace around him. She felt her strength waning, a soft tug at her essence as the thing behind the boy grew bolder, but a screech broke through the howling darkness, a shriek that pierced Sarah's heart. It was the fear in Alex's eyes, sinking deeper into the abyss as the child's laughter mixed with a sinister chorus. "Alex! Fight it!" Her voice quaked. She could see him slipping away, the shadows threatening to envelop him completely. With one final effort, she threw herself forward, grasping Alex tightly, and wrenched herself back into a frantic retreat. The sinister faces twisted in anger, the laughter turning shrill and chaotic, but then, just as they reached the threshold of the doorway, something forceful pushed against her from behind. A cold gust slammed into her, knocking the breath from her lungs. Groaning, she stumbled back, but the grip on Alex tightened, pulling him further into the shadow's embrace. "Mom! Help!" His cry pierced her ears, each word a dagger of despair. As she clutched the doorframe, panic clouding her thoughts, she caught sight of the shadow's leader, Johnny. Those eyes bore into her soul, a reflection of her deepest fears burnt into her vision. In this moment of sheer terror, Sarah felt a heavy realization set in. What if she wasn't just fighting to save Alex? What if it was something much darker, something woven into her past secrets that linked her to this chaos? With a seething scream, she yanked the door open, hurling herself and Alex inside. The shadows clawed at her heels, desperate and malevolent. As she slammed the door shut, breathless and wild-eyed, Sarah turned to her son, hoping to find him whole, untouched. But just as she reached for him, she paused, feeling the weight of silence flood back over them, thick and suffocating. "Alex?" she whispered, dread curling in her stomach. Where was the warmth she needed to feel? But the answer lay cloaked in shadows yet unseen. What other horrors awaited them now that they were trapped within the walls of their own home? Heart racing, Sarah's palms tingled with a strange electricity, the silence in the house overwhelming. She turned slowly, searching for Alex. The dim light from the single bulb flickered, creating shadows that danced across the walls, shadows too familiar, too watchful. Alex?" Her voice wavered as she moved deeper into the gloom. The space felt foreign, as if the room had transformed into a maze since they last entered. The air was thick, almost suffocating, laden with an unsettling presence. "He wasn't there," panic surged through her, constricting her chest. "Alex!" She spun around, desperate. The shadows from the porch seemed to ripple and expand, encroaching upon her as if they were alive, hungry. Just then, a soft sound broke the silence. Laughter. Not the innocent giggle of a child, but a mocking echo, jarring and twisted. "Mommy, come play." The voice chimed, unmistakably Alex's yet distorted, coded in eerie notes that sent chills racing down her spine. "Where are you?" she cried out, heart pounding in response to the otherworldly laughter that surrounded her, filling the corners of the room with dread. She stumbled forward, the walls closing in on her, shadows lurking in every crevice, whispering her fears back at her. "Please, show yourself." Her shame turned to fury as she realized the creatures outside were now here, weaving into the fabric of her home. "Join us, Sarah," they cooed, their voices echoing from all directions, wrapping around her like chains. She squeezed her eyes shut, blocking out the sound, trying to focus on her breathing, willing herself to stay awake to fight, but then she opened her eyes to see ghostly shapes flickering at the edges of her vision, twisted bodies and ghostly hands reaching out, pulling at the walls of her sanity. "No!" she shouted, forcing herself to move, to navigate the dark room that was becoming a nightmare. Her mind raced back to the stories her grandmother told about a darkness that could swallow your soul. Was it true? Had she awakened the very thing she feared? She stumbled into the living room, where flickering candles cast dancing silhouettes on the walls. The shadows seemed to be palm leaves in the wind, except they weren't just shadows, they were forms of children, all with hollow eyes and predatory grins. "Your son is ours," one child hissed, pointing a skeletal finger at her, the grin twisted and unsettling. Realization crashed over her like a wave. They wanted Alex. "Get away!" she screamed, stepping backward into a corner, adrenaline surging. She fumbled for a lamp on the table, flipping the switch, praying for a burst of light. The glow illuminated the faces surrounding her children, their features twisted into ghastly visages. Human yet not, like reflections in a broken mirror. Each face bore the remnants of the innocence they had stolen. "Mommy!" echoed a familiar voice, but it was layered in pain, a cry that sent ripples of despair through her. "Help me! Alex!" Panic clawed at her throat as she pushed her way past the laughing shadows. Where are you?" It was as if the house itself was alive, shifting around her, blocking her path. Every door she pushed against was heavy, weighed down with sorrow. She could hear Alex's voice, faint yet close, echoing somewhere behind the veil of darkness. "Mom!" She gritted her teeth, fear igniting a fierce determination. With one desperate leap, she charged toward the front door, praying it wasn't locked. Then something whispered, hot on her heels, pricking her senses. "You can't trap us." The voice slithered around her, weaving a cocoon of dread. Before she reached the door, a dark shadow exploded forth, wrapping tightly around her waist, pulling her back. She gasped, fighting against it, but it only tightened. From within the shroud, a figure emerged. Alex, but altered, no longer a child but a puppet in the shadow's game, eyes vacant, soaking up the darkness. "Join us, Mommy," he whispered, his voice warped like a recording played too slowly. "No!" Sarah screamed, trying to reach him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Fight it! Fight them!" Suddenly, a burst of blinding light exploded from her grandmother's old lamp, illuminating the shadows. They recoiled, shrieking, twisting their forms as they could no longer withstand the light. But in that brief moment of release, she saw it, the flicker of recognition in Alex's eyes. "Mom, help!" he cried again, and with that, the shadows faltered, allowing a breath of space between them. The room trembled with their anger, but there was a flicker of hope. In that moment, Sarah knew they were not just here to steal her son, they were afraid of her light. "Alex, hold on!" She yelled with renewed strength, closing her eyes as she gathered all the love and memories they shared, fueling her spirit for the confrontation. As she summoned her resolve, the weight of the darkness threatened to crash around her once more. Would she break through, or was she destined to lose everything to the shadows? The air thickened, electric with tension. How long could she and Alex withstand the horror closing in? The shadows convulsed, skittering back as if repelled by the light. But the moment was fleeting. Just as Sarah felt a surge of hope, the dark tendrils coiled around her arms, seeping through her skin like smoke. She gasped, feeling their icy grip tightening, drawing her into their depths. Her heart thundered as she wrestled both with the shadows and her fears. Alex! She shouted again, the word escaping her lips like a desperate prayer. For a heartbeat, the air grew calm, almost serene, as if the shadows paused to listen. Then, the laughter returned, an ominous chorus echoing all around her, a chilling reminder that they were not just spirits, but predators. "Mommy, join us," they echoed, voices sickly sweet, weaving temptation into her desperation. As Sarah strained against the growing darkness, Alex's figure wavered, flickering like a dying bulb. "I'm here," he cried, but the shadows enveloped him, distorting his face into something unrecognizable, something ghastly. Her heart sank into despair. "Fight it, Alex. Remember our favorite song," she shouted, knowing it was a long shot, but clinging to every thread of hope. The shadows shrieked, momentarily distracted by her defiance. She squeezed her eyes shut, summoning courage from the depths of her memory. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," she began, her voice breaking but rising above the cacophony. The words felt hollow, awkward in the midst of terror, but the melody was theirs, their bond. At first, a wave of silence washed over them. Then, amid the flickering torment, Alex's eyes sparked with clarity. "Mommy?" he whimpered, confusion cutting through the shadow's hold, revealing the frightened boy beneath. "Keep fighting, sweetheart," Sarah urged, willing him back to her. The shadows shrieked, their anguish palpable, clinging to him as if he were their lifeline. The adversaries seemed to coalesce, a dark maelstrom swirling around them, a vortex of sorrow and fury. Straining, Sarah forced herself to step forward, inch by tortuous inch, determined to reclaim her son from the brink. She could feel the shadows trying to pull her into despair, their whispers gnawing at her resolve. Just then, she heard it, a soft echo of her song mimicking her, reverberating through the chaos. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," it floated through the darkness, weak at first but gaining strength. "Sing it with me, Alex," she called, her voice cracking with urgency. "We can push them away." "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," he began, the words stuttering but undeniable. The shadows hissed, slashing at the air as if they were caught in a storm of light and sound. For every note that Alex formed, the shadows recoiled, struggling against the incantation woven by love. In that moment, she saw Alex, really saw him, his spirit glimmering amid the suffocating darkness, fighting as fiercely as she was. With every ounce of will, she poured herself into the song, igniting all their shared memories, sparkling like stars in the universe, but the darkness rumbled, coiling back as if forming a large fist tightening around them. In a furious rush, the shadows lunged, slashing through the light's barrier, determined to silence them. "Mommy, I'm scared," Alex cried, his voice wavering. "I'm right here," she shouted, fighting the coils constricting around her, urging every ounce of light she had left into the air. "You're not alone." The room vibrated with the tension, shadows flickering like flames desperate for fuel. Then, a sobering thought struck her. The very shadows that were encasing them were born from fears hers and Alex's. "Face your fears, Alex. We can outshine them." As she summoned strength, the bonds seemed to loosen slightly. Alex's voice had joined hers, trembling yet courageous. The shadows twisted and writhed, their grip weakening as light surged through the cracks, but as they began to push back, she noticed a shadow slinking further back, lingering. It hovered, observing the confrontation with a twisted grin, a mass of darkness that seemed different, almost sentient. She couldn't focus. What did it want? "Don't let it in, Alex. We fight. Together. The shadow grinned wider, stretching across the room as it whispered, together. But you're already losing. Sarah felt her heart drop. What if it was right? What if they didn't have the strength? The shadows shrieked again, this time as if in agreement. But just then, a surge of radiant light erupted from the lantern, growing brighter as Sarah pressed on, the mere thought of hope cutting through despair. Hold on! She cried, gripping the moment of defiance, the shadow looming larger, ready to strike. What was behind that darkness? And why did it feel more powerful than the rest? As their voices clashed with the shadows, Sarah knew that the final battle for their souls was about to begin, and the fate of their bond hung in peril. Could they ultimately cast the shadows out of their lives, or was it already too late? Their song rose, a desperate echo in the dark, but the greatest terror lay still hidden, an answer lurking just beyond reach. What might those shadows reveal? The shadows surged again, a tide of darkness crashing over Sarah and Alex, threatening to drown them in despair. The laughter grew louder, a sinister symphony echoing all around, mocking their struggle. The air thickened, with every breath tasting of ash and fear. "Mommy, I can't hold on much longer," Alex cried, his small voice cracking, wavering like a fragile candle flickering in the mounting storm. Sarah felt her hope flickering with him, a dual dance of courage and panic. "Just keep singing," she shouted, but her voice trembled uncertainly, fear nipping at her heels. The shadows hissed, a chorus of discontent, each voice entwined with malicious intent. With each passing second, the oppressive weight of the darkness pressed closer, wrapping tighter around her limbs. The light from the lantern began to dim, flickering weakly. Was it possible that their song, their defiance, was faltering? "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," she gasped, forcing the words past the constricted knot in her throat. "How I wonder what you are," the shadows shrieked, and Sarah felt a pull, a relentless tug at her heart that threatened to tear her away from Alex. Her son's face was growing dimmer, a shadowy version of himself drifting further into the penumbra. "Mommy!" he called again, his voice a fragile thread stretching into the abyss. It sent shards of ice through her veins. The larger shadow, the one that had lingered with an almost sadistic pleasure, moved closer. Its form shifted, an amalgamation of every nightmare Sarah had ever known. With every heartbeat, it whispered lurid truths, things she feared to confront, memories better left buried. "You can't save him, Sarah. You are not enough. You never were," the words scalded her. Her heart raced, and exhaustion clung to her limbs like lead. She struggled against the encroaching dark, biting back despair, but it loomed just outside her reach, promising to swallow them both. "Let go, Mommy. I can't hold it." Alex's voice broke through her thoughts, laced with panic. "No!" she screamed, her resolve solidifying. It was a cry of defiance, raw and primal. She drew on every memory of their laughter, every moment of joy they had shared. The sweetness of ice cream on hot summer days, the warmth of storytelling by the fireplace. Those memories shone like beacons, guiding her through the oppressive darkness. "Remember the day we flew those kites, Alex?" she called out, clutching onto the tether of hope. "With the bright orange one that got stuck in the tree?" He hesitated, the encroaching shadows quivering slightly as if recoiling from her vibrance. "Yes, yes, the orange one." His voice was trembling, but she could hear the tiniest spark of recognition, reigniting his spirit. "Keep painting the memories in your mind. Don't let them steal it," she yelled, desperate to pull him back. "Don't let them take you. We're together." The shadows grew agitated, shrieking in fury, swirling violently around them. The darkness was no longer just an enemy, it was alive, reacting to their fight. It unleashed a cacophony of screams, each one sharper than the last, threatening to slice through the fragile barrier of light she had managed to erect. That in a moment of clarity, Sarah saw beyond the swirling chaos. She realized something, a truth buried deep within the shadows. They fed on their fears, yes, but they also grabbed at emotions, memories, and hopes, twisting them cruelly. The insistence of the dark urged her to abandon everything, to let the hopelessness take over. "You are alone, Sarah. You always have been," it crooned, weaving despair into her very essence. "No," she shouted back, her own resolve giving wings to her voice. "That's a lie. We are never alone." Strength surged in her chest as she focused on Alex, his small face still flickering, still breakable. Those shadows may want to consume them, but they didn't understand how deeply sewn their bond was, how powerful love could be an ember in the pitch-black night. "Alex, sing with me," she urged, her voice cutting through the chaotic thunder circling them. "We can make the darkness fade. We can choose our memories." In that moment, with hearts beating loudly, their song burst forth again, trembling but fierce, wrapping around them like a cocoon of light. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," the light swelled, spilling warmth against the encroaching claws of darkness, and the shadows shrieked, wavering in their assault, but as the darkness writhed, that larger shadow, the one that had loomed, flashed closer, its grin twisting into something far more unsettling than mere darkness. "That one," it hissed, voice like grinding metal. "It knows your fears. It can pull out the worst of you. Can you face it, Sarah?" She froze, heart pounding, realization crashing like a wave. What was hidden behind that shadow? What terror was it hiding? As the song forged onward, she knew something more sinister was lurking beneath, ready to make its reveal. And the thought curled around her heart, cold and unyielding. Would facing that shadow mean breaking the bond she fought so desperately to protect, or would it lead them to their salvation? With a heart full of dread, she allowed the continuing surge of song to flood her senses and wondered what horror lay in wait. The song pulsed through the air, an unwavering lifeline, yet Sarah felt a chill seep deeper into her bones with every note. The shadows twisted and twitched, eager to claw their way back into her psyche. They swirled like angry wasps, hissing and jeering as if they held the secrets of her very soul. "Mommy, I'm scared. I can't see you," Alex cried out, his voice trembling, small and haunting against the cacophony. The top of his head seemed to fade into nothingness. Panic crashed over Sarah. "Close your eyes. Think of the kite. Picture it," she shouted, throwing her voice across the sound of chaos. "Think of how it danced in the wind." But her words fell flat, swallowed by the darkness that drew dangerously closer, pressing on her chest like a heavy weight. The larger shadow slithered nearer, its form a terrifying enigma. It whispered promises that slithered through her mind, dark riddles masked as truths. Memories of failure, every time she had faltered, shadowed her courage. It fed hungrily on her doubts, its presence a gaping maw, eager to engulf them both. What if it's right? Sarah thought for a fleeting moment as agony twined itself around her heart. What if I am not enough? The laughter erupted again, a cruel symphony that sent shivers racing down her spine. "No. No." She gasped, shaking her head as if to scatter the thoughts, dislodging them like autumn leaves. "We are together. That's all that matters." She tried to push away the horror pressing in, but her certainty felt like whispers lost in a tempest. Suddenly, the light flickered chaotically, shifting from feeble warmth to an abrasive glare. Shadows distorted, revealing fleeting images, memories that twisted into something grotesque. Images of safety now turned to chilling reminders of her failures. Every time she'd let Alex down echoed in her mind. "You can't protect him," the shadow taunted, slithering closer. "Remember the monster in the dark. You can't even save yourself." Alex's cries turned frantic, the echoes of their shared love spiraling into frantic chaos. "Mommy, sing louder. I'm here, baby." With determination igniting her veins, Sarah seized upon the warmth of their shared moments, even as trepidation clawed at her insides. "Keep conjuring the memories. Think. Think about when we first saw the fireworks." A broken, yet desperate light illuminated her face. She had to fight back, had to remind Alex of the joy beyond the choking shadows. As they sang with trembling voices, the darkness roiled violently around them. Shadows shrieked, an uproar of anguish growing more desperate. You will never escape. But in a burst of reckless courage, Sarah pushed through, concentrating on Alex's warmth, his smile, painting vivid images in her mind of the times they had spent together. Remember the summer rain? Remember how we danced, soaking wet? Yes. I can see it. Mommy. It was beautiful. His voice rang clear, unfurling against the darkness, turning the memories into a brilliant flame. But reality twisted again. That larger shadow, relentless, swirled closer, revealing a void that invoked fear so deeply it made Sarah's heart ache with despair. You think you can win? You're on borrowed time, Sarah. What happens when the song falters? When the light fades? Her chest tightened. What if the thought struck her with cold clarity? What if their tether was nothing but delusion? The panic clawed at her, momentarily freezing her breath. What if I lose him? Mommy. Alex's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. Please don't let it take me. The shadows slunk forward, waiting to consume them whole, but beneath that overwhelming dread, something stirred within Sarah. What if the thought lingered there was a way to turn this darkness against itself? With Alex's bright essence at the forefront of her mind, she tightened her grip around the lantern and steadied her breath. Face it, Sarah. Face it. She yelled, shaking off her doubts. We can do this. I refuse to let you win. As fear clutched tightly around her throat, it was a mantra rising through the turmoil. Together. They sang in unison, a surge of unwavering strength igniting the dim light around them. Their words coalesced into an energy that startled even the shadows, shaking the stark silence of hopelessness. Yet deep in the murky depths, a new sound emerged. A low growl of anger, reverberating like thunder, filled the air. You cannot escape the truth. The shadows writhed in infernal delight, pushing closer, eager to snatch away their fragile hope. Mommy. I can't hold on. Despair flooded Sarah again, but this time, another emotion bloomed, a stubborn resolve. She gritted her teeth, feeling energy surge within, as if the very fabric of her connection with Alex was forming a shield against the swirling chaos. But just as she felt her strength coalesce, the larger shadow loomed higher than ever before, a grotesque visage revealing something even more sinister, a truth that could shatter their reality. What lies beyond the light? It hissed, teeth glistening like sharpened blades. What if I show you what it truly means to lose? Sarah's heart dropped into an icy pit. What else did it know? What other horrors did it hide? Her gaze locked on the creeping darkness, the essence of fear boiling under her skin. Inhaling deeply, Sarah steeled herself to face what was about to be revealed. A battle was waging, one that could seal their fate. Would she dare to confront the darkness, knowing it held more than just shadows? The ground beneath them trembled, the shadows swirling violently, a storm brewing at the edge of impossibility. Would the strength of their bond be enough to endure the tempest, or would it unravel them both? The darkness pulsed, shrieking for silence. But as Sarah took a step forward, she sensed a deeper truth waiting to break free, and her trembling hand reached out against the darkness, swallowed by the unknown. What lurking dread awaited them at the next beat of fate? The shadows rushed in, swirling like a tempest, a chaos of darkness threatening to drown them. Sarah felt the cool grip of despair clutching at her throat, threatening to silence her. The growl of the larger shadow echoed in her head, an ominous bell tolling, warning her of the impending doom. Mommy, please. The urgency in Alex's voice cut through the visceral noise, ringing like a distress signal. She turned to him, their eyes locking in a moment of shared terror, and her heart surged with a primal need to protect him. Hold on to me, she whispered, her hands trembling as she reached for his fear. We're going to face it together. The shadows lunged, but they were met with an unexpected force. The lantern flickered wildly, casting bursts of golden light that illuminated the darkness, splintering it momentarily, like glass fracturing. Sarah could see it, a form trapped within the shadows, struggling against the weight of despair, a reflection of her own fears. "What is that?" Alex gasped, the fear thick in his voice. "Whatever it is, it won't take us," she asserted, although her mind raced, grappling with the truth. This was no ordinary darkness, it was sentient, alive, and somehow aware of their deepest nightmares. "Tell me what you see," she urged, fighting to keep the tremor from her own voice. "Focus, Alex. We can conquer this. What do you see?" "The faces," he stammered, his small hands clutching hers. "There they are, people. They're sad and scared, just like us." The revelation hit Sarah like a bucket of ice water. "They're trapped." A cold realization sparked inside her. "We can set them free." The idea surged through her. If they could confront this darkness by embracing and acknowledging the fears that lay hidden within, perhaps they could break its hold. She squared her shoulders, pulling Alex closer. "Listen to me." Her voice rose, echoing against the tumult. "We're not alone. We are stronger together. We can help them." Desperation turned into an eerie bravery. She began to sing the song again, but this time louder, clearer. The notes danced like fireflies spiraling into the darkness. She poured everything she had into her voice, calling upon not just the memories that wove their bond, but the spirits trapped in the abyss, inviting them to join in their light. "Alex, sing with me. Reach out to them." Together, a shaky but determined harmony soared between them, wrapping around the faces lurking in the shadows. As their voices wove through the chaos, the darkness recoiled, shrieking as though its very core was being pierced. A wave of warmth spread through the air, a torrent of hope igniting the shadows, searing through the fear. "You can fight it," Sarah urged the trapped souls, her heart racing. "You are not alone. We are not alone." But just as the darkness began to retreat, a lunging shadow shot toward them, more ferocious than before, revealing a monstrous maw, eyes gleaming like shards of glass in the dim light. It unleashed a howl that reverberated, drowning out their melody, a sound that shrieked of betrayal and pain. "You think you can save them? They belong to me." The voice rumbled like thunder, a cold wind stinging Sarah's face. "Never!" she shouted back, her determination solidifying into a wall of defiance. "They are not yours." In a moment that felt suspended in time, Sarah felt a shift, a pulse within the rhythm of the shadows. "What if we are more powerful than we know?" The thought struck like lightning. They were the light, and they could fight back, not just against the shadows, but against the fear lodged deep in their hearts. "Come on, Alex. Let them know they can escape." As they poured heart and soul into their song, the lantern flared, throwing light into every corner of their prison. The faces in the shadows began to respond. Eyes blinked back to life, hope sparking where only despair had reigned. But then, a bone-chilling shriek broke through the air again, freezing them in place. "You cannot change what's already set in stone. Your time is running out." The air grew thick with tension, each vibration loaded with promise and dread alike. The ground trembled beneath their feet, shaking as the shadows twisted around them, coiling like a serpent ready to strike. What happens next? Sarah's mind raced as she felt the energy shift, something darker rising within the shadows. Would this be enough? Would their light stand firm against the tide of darkness threatening to unleash its wrath? As the lantern dimmed, the forms in the shadows began to meld, merging into something far more sinister, a shape that loomed larger than anything she could have imagined. And just when Sarah thought they had a chance, the malevolent voice whispered from the depths, sliding into her thoughts, "You will know despair like no other before this night is through." What was lurking in the darkness, waiting to claim her? What would it reveal about the nature of their struggle? The shadows writhed, pulling together into a grotesque mass, swirling like a storm intent on devouring everything in its path. Sarah felt the cold tendrils reach out, creeping closer, searching for weakness. Panic surged within her like a tidal wave, threatening to breach her defenses. "Mommy, it's getting bigger." Alex's voice trembled, his small frame pressing against her as he scanned the darkening expanse. "I know, baby, but we're not backing down," she replied, her voice a fierce whisper aimed at the growing darkness. Each pulse of shadow buckled the ground beneath her feet, forcing her to clutch Alex tighter. Suddenly, a flash of blinding light illuminated the beast that emerged from the void. Its form was enormous, its skin a sickly, shifting amalgamation of those they had sensed lost souls molded into a horrifying figure, twisted and malformed. The eyes glistened with malice, like dark ebony marbles reflecting their worst fears. The shadow creature roared, a sound that resonated deep within Sarah's bones, freezing her in place. "You dare defy me?" It hissed, the voice a guttural mix of mockery and pain, echoing the cries of the trapped souls. "You'll feel their sorrow soon enough." With each spoken word, tendrils of darkness lashed out, grazing her arm, sending a chill coursing through her veins. A terrifying thought sparked in her mind: this creature was built of sorrow, a malicious entity feeding on despair. To fight it would mean confronting that very despair within herself. "Think, Sarah. What do we have?" she urged herself, struggling to execute a plan amidst the frantic chaos. Her heart thundered in her chest, and the lantern's light flickered weakly, mirroring her fear. "Mommy." Alex's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts, raw and desperate. I can't hold on. I'm so scared." "Alex, listen to me. Look at me," Sarah commanded, forcing their eyes to meet. "Remember the stories I told you? The ones about bravery? Every time the hero faced their fear head-on, they found strength. But this isn't like the stories. This is real," he cried, frantically glancing back at the advancing shadows. "Exactly. It's real, and so is our love. Love is more powerful than this." She felt it, the warmth inching back into her heart, a truth she desperately clung to. As if her words summoned the strength of the lost souls, a faint whisper of hope flew from the faces in the darkness, filling the air like the gentle breeze before a storm. Together they echoed, a cacophony of lost spirits weaving into her resolve. "Together!" Sarah shouted, a roaring surge of defiance rallying in her throat. "We are not afraid. We will fight back. Mommy." Alex's face lit with newfound determination. His small hand slipped from her grasp, and for a moment, panic seized her, but he stepped forward, standing brave before the beast. "We'll face it together." His voice rang out, clear against the chaos. The ground shook with the unholy bellow of the creature, but instead of retreating, they stood firm, shoulder to shoulder. The lantern flickered again, less timid now, igniting with a fierce glow. "Sing!" Sarah urged, both of them pushing their voices through the tumult. Notes burst forth like light piercing the darkest night. The warmth swelled, pushing against the curling shadows, breaking through the suffocating despair. A gust of wind pulled the shadows back, as if the creature feared their combined light. "Stop!" it screeched, its voice splintering into 1,000 shards. "You're not the master of this darkness. We choose our own fate." Sarah bellowed, as their song clenched tightly against the oppressive weight. The lantern blazed, and the forms in the shadows flickered between agony and hope, a battleground of emotions seeking release. But just as victory seemed close, a piercing scream ripped through the air, reverberating in their very souls. "You cannot deny the truth that binds you. You will suffer. You will fall." The shadows lunged again, this time taking shape, a force of fury rising against them. "What is it saying?" Alex cried, his face pale, eyes wide. I don't know," Sarah faltered, dread curling around her heart. As the last round of their melody echoed into the abyss, darkness surged, and despair spilled over like molten ink. What was the truth lurking beneath the surface? What dark reality awaited, threaded deep within the shadow's icy grip? "Just hold on," Sarah yelled, determination warring with despair. But beneath the fury, something else stirred, a whisper of doubt, a temptation to surrender. What awaited them was not just darkness, but a revelation that could change everything. The shadows surged, a tidal wave crashing against their fragile light, wrapping around Sarah and Alex with a suffocating rage. Gritting her teeth, Sarah fought the darkness, channeling every ounce of motherly love she had. We've faced nightmares before, haven't we, Alex? His eyes, wide and scared, glittered with a flicker of understanding beneath the weight of the shadows. Together, remember, he breathed, as the promise bristled between them. Exactly. Let us remind them what light can do. She drew close, their bodies pressing together, heartbeats sinking as their song grew louder, more confident. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. They sang, voices blending, the melody weaving an unbreakable bond. The lantern flourished, a beacon ripping through the oppressive gloom as the shadows hissed in anger. Suddenly, the air shifted, charged with an energy that ignited Sarah's resolve. You are not powerless. Your bond is your strength. She yelled, directing the blazing energy toward the encroaching darkness, punctuating every word with conviction, but from the depths, the shadow creature, the embodiment of despair, roared back, a cacophony that ricocheted through their minds. You think you can save him? You will never escape your fears. The ghastly visage twisted, eyes gleaming with malice. Lies. Sarah shouted defiantly, forcing herself to step forward. You thrive on our fears, but you do not own us. With each word, they pushed against the grip of darkness, their light burning brighter. We will not be lost. Not to you. A creaking shockwave rippled through the room, but she stood resolute. Beside her, Alex gripped her hand tightly, the warmth of his little fingers anchoring her. Mommy, I'm scared. I know, sweetheart. But we can face this together. She replied, resolve igniting in her chest. Summoning memories of their shared joys, she called upon everything they had built together, the small victories, the laughter around the dinner table, the warmth of hugs after a scary story. Remember how brave you were when we saw the fireworks. She pressed on, a note of urgency threading through her voice. Focus on that. Hold on to our moments. Okay, I can do that. He gasped, voice trembling yet eager to fight the darkness. The shadows howled, fury rising as their hold weakened. The creature coiled, twisting and thrashing like a serpent lashing out, attempting to drown them. But brighter still shone the light of their bond. Together, Alex. Sing with me. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. They began again, voices strong, intertwining like a lifeline. As if answering their call, the distant faces in the shadows opened their eyes, color flickering back into their forms. You're not alone. Sarah shouted. We can break free. The lantern flared, a burst of energy emerging, washing over the darkness like dawn breaking after the longest night. Light. We have to embrace the light. The luminescence swept through, and the chilling fingers of the shadows recoiled, fear evident in their screams. Mommy! Alex cried, his voice mingling with her determination. I can see them. You can. They had transformed, no longer lost souls. The frightened children stepped forward in unity, voices rising to join their song. We can be free. They echoed, a collective promise that resonated in Sarah's heart. The creature recoiled, fury sparking into desperation. No. You will suffer. It roared, voice slicing through the air. The shadows howled, desperate to reclaim their grip, but the force of bravery and love surged stronger, overwhelming the dark tide. Not anymore. Sarah cried, her voice cutting as deep as their fears threatened to bleed. With one powerful crescendo, they closed their eyes, feeling the memories of joy, laughter, and love spark within them, igniting their final burst of light. Together. The word rang through the air, slamming against the encroaching darkness like a fist. For a heartbeat, silence enveloped them, a moment where hope surged high. Then, as they sang, their collective voices melded, shattering chains of despair. The light erupted, a sunburst scattering the shadows, banishing the darkness that had clawed at their spirits, and then, silence. Sarah opened her eyes to find the room bathed in a golden glow. The shifting shadows had vanished, replaced by a warm tranquility. No more screams, just the echoes of their song fading softly. She blinked, absorbing the radiant calm that enveloped her. "Mommy?" Her voice trembled, small yet filled with wonder. "I'm right here, Alex," she whispered back, overwhelming relief and disbelief flooding her being. "We did it. We fought the darkness together." Alex's small face smiled up at her, his spirit rekindled and whole, and for a moment, nothing felt threatening, just complete, warm safety. But as they stepped outside, the night's stillness washed over them. The world felt different, the shadows had receded, clipped and contained. The moon shone brightly above, illuminating paths once shrouded in fear. Neighbors came out, stretching from behind brightened doors, awestruck faces meeting theirs. "You got your son back," one woman exclaimed, astonished that a flicker of hope ignited in Sarah's heart. Maybe they weren't entirely free of shadows, but there was light now, and light would always pave the way back. "Thank you," she whispered to the child spirits who once danced in the darkness. "Thank you for guiding us." And then they moved forward, knowing they had fought against the deepest fears. Together. As they embraced the dawn of a new day, Sarah felt the shadows fade. She and Alex would seize the light, bound by love, ready to face whatever came next. Remember, this fight would always exist. But so would the love that would always endeavor to shine through no matter how deep the shadows stretched. So cherish your moments, hold them tight, and never forget, the light is always stronger than the darkness. Now, if you enjoyed this wild journey, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, it absolutely makes a difference. And while you're at it, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. I want to hear every word. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this epic finale. The true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel, and I know you are one of them. Let us keep this incredible journey going together.